Artificial intelligence. It is used more today than at any point in history. You might be familiar with it or you might not, but if you've ever played a video game, then you are as familiar with it as any other nerd. From the golden days of Pong to the detailed adventures of Fallout New Vegas, artificial intelligence has been improving time and time again. So what constitutes artificial intelligence? Or AI for a shorter way of saying it? Well, AI is the intelligence of machines or software to which it can make appropriate responses to its environment. When I talked to Dr. D. Parks, a computer science professor who has taught AI for over 20 years, she gave me an example with a simple game, tic-tac-toe. She talked about how a programmer can create a program that allows it to make decisions based on where the opponent places their marker. If I were to place an O directly in the middle of the board, the AI has been written to where it can guess where my next move will be and take the best course of action to counter my moves. Of course, creating a program that can see into the future is one thing, but it would take too much time for it to generate a response to every possible outcome of the game, so it is usually just made to where it can see 3 or so turns ahead to save time. This can be applied to easy, medium, and hard modes of a game, where they predict more and more the higher the difficulty you are at. So, what does this have to do with your lives and the future of technology? The tic-tac-toe example is only relevant to playing games, not saving lives. Why waste your time when you could be using technology to help someone? Well, this is another great point Dr. Parks brought up. There are many ways to apply AI technology to things other than video games. One of the main ways is with simulations. Simulations are imitations of real-world events over a period of time. Astronauts use simulations to prepare for going out to space. Meteorologists use simulations to predict weather, and scientists use simulations to estimate the mortality rate of a given disease, if they choose to set it loose. Simulations can be key for predicting the future of our safety, and they have been getting more and more accurate over the years. Car crash simulations, roller coaster simulations, and disaster preparedness simulations, predicting how we would deal with a meteor heading for Earth. All these things help us in our lives, whether we know it or not. But let's step back and talk more about AI in video game. Now that you know how AI can help with simulations, which is considered a type of video game, how do video games in general help us out? The kind of games that we like to sit back and enjoy while eating Doritos. Well, it's simple really. Video games help create more advanced AI. Over the years, video games have increased in demand and only the highest of quality will be acceptable for more serious gamers nowadays. People get into computer science, which has a branch that studies AI, just so they can help design video games. Computer science, the study of how the insides of a computer work, just for creating a video game. We have gone from games like Mario, where the AI for enemies are just walk back and forth, hoping for someone to land on it, to games like Skyrim, where enemies react to how the player approaches them. It's almost like playing against someone else, but they happen to be dumb sometimes. Gaming would never be what it is like today without AI. They can have the best graphics or story, but without high-end AI, it just doesn't immerse a gamer into its setting. When you see a character running into a wall that is supposed to be attacking you, it's just hard not to laugh. So gaming is important because it helps create new AI, and AI in gaming is equally important because it helps drive in customers. AI helps create a setting in which a player can feel empathy for a certain character or even figure out ridiculous tactics for fighting enemies. This all stems from the idea that Dr. Park talks about, where they have a list of commands that they can use depending on what the player inputs. But in this case, unlike tic-tac-toe, where it is all a tree of commands depending on the player's move, there is another thing called finite state machines. This is a more advanced version of tic-tac-toe where now the pieces are moving on their own and jumping up and down on the board. A finite state machine is what determines the AI's command list and when they should use a command. For example, in Skyrim, the enemies don't just swing blindly in the air until they reach you. The enemies have separate states in which they can attack and run towards you, or run away depending on the circumstance. We aren't talking Mario here. It is more challenging and more rewarding when you get to take down such sophisticated AI. These types of AI have been used and improved over time since the dawn of video games, reaching higher and higher to the intellect of humans. But we are still a long ways away from developing something that can be considered true human intellect from a program. To test whether a machine can think like a human is actually called the Turing test. The Turing test is a special event that goes on every year where people compete to see whose machine is more human-like. The Loebner Prize is given out each year for the machine that gives the best human-like answer. If you aren't familiar with Cleverbot, then you have been missing out. Cleverbot is a website that interacts with you depending on what you put in the text box. You can basically talk to the AI as it responds to each of your questions, and it seems to do so with answers that vary from relevant to highly irrelevant. This is a cool program that is easily accessible online to see how some lower level AI work. This can even be compared to Siri, the iPhone application of which you can actually talk to. Siri is a similar program to Cleverbot, but with less of an ability to say too many things. It just gets the point across without all the bullshit. This is where AI and technology is headed. Video games will continue to improve AI to where eventually we will all be sitting at home plugged in. Education systems may change with simulations so that kids can learn all they need to in the comfort of their homes or without having to deal with bad teachers. The idea of Siri and Cleverbot can be introduced to fast food restaurants and even stores such as Walmart or Target when checking out. The need for human interaction will become drastically lowered. But this isn't a presentation on that. It's on the future of our technology and the impact it will have once AI has become a more integral part of day-to-day activity, rather than just in video games. However, I'm all in favor of keeping the high-end AI in video games if it means anything.